How are you?
I am wonderful.
Yes, it's Transformation Tuesday. Hey, I get to jam with David LeBang. Yes, DL in the house. Woo!
What what a way to get started. This is awesome.
Yes. All right, I'm gonna turn it down because I will jam like all night, all day, David. This is like my whole thing. This is what life is about. All right.
Why don't you
Yeah.
turn it up instead?
Yes. We need the love and music on this planet. And it's so amazing to see you.
My heart is overflowing with Sheilah Smiley.
Yes. Yes. I have some messages from Spirit for you. This is what I do, David.
Let's start with that.
I don't know what to tell you. You know, you are such an amazing human being. And so I always tap into energy to just make sure, like, okay, Spirit, what's up? Like, tell me who David is, what we doing. Is he for my highest and greatest good? So people don't have a chance with me because I cut out bullshitters right at the start, David. So what's really amazing that, and I know you felt your energy when we first, even before we met, when I was just going through the website, I was like, wow, this is absolutely, the colors are lively and joyful, and just how, you know, I was reading just so much, and dude, you are just amazing. So this is how you are showing up in my life, and I guarantee this is how you show up in the world. Magic makeshifter. And this dude right here, oh my God, David, magical map shifter. This dude is so powerful and so magical that when he steps on the scene, as you can see, shit happens. Okay, so the magical map shifter is someone who comes into your life at a point that you have manifested that person because you've done the work, and you're co-creating with the conscious universe, and this person comes in with all the tools that you've been missing, right? All the energy, all the tools that you've been missing to really help you connect the dots to your back to your own magic and to release the power on the earth. You are like you're sort of like that in the, did you see the last Marbles? You're this superhero who knows exactly what that the person who's caused to lead the battle, and they just don't feel like you're an Aquaman. When his twin flame, his divine feminine came, you're that person. He was down on himself. He wasn't sure if he was the king, if he could save the underwater world and then the planet. And I'm not this, I'm not that. And then she came in to remind him who he is. And this is who you are, and this is who you have been. And so the universe is recognizing you as this powerful divine leader who's able to see people beyond themselves, who see people like Source sees themselves. And you do it blindly because in your heart, you see with your third eye, you see with your crown chakra, and you see with your heart chakra. And so Spirit is saying, use this own energy in your own life because you're able to blow people's shit up. And sometimes, you know, I think as a dad and as a husband and just as a person who lives an everyday life, you get so, you know, when you're in your own little world, it's like you forget who you are. You forget that you are the magical map shifter in your own community. It's, you know, it's almost like you're, in a sense, you're like Jesus, somebody who is not accepted in their own community. And you're this badass, and they want you to go. And when Jesus goes out of his own community, he's well received. But when he comes back, he's not. And then when he rises, of course, as the savior, then everybody recognizes his divinity. And so this is who you are. And this is who you are to me. And this is, I've been praying for you. So this is who you are. And then you got 3 messages from your spirit guides, from my messages from Guides Oracle deck. And this is the story of who you are. And it says you are here for a purpose, which you already know. And your purpose is to remind people that abundance is their birthright, and to stop relinquishing their power, to stop giving away their power. And you remind them of their power because you feel that everybody has a right to abundance. And for some reason, you're this person who could turn nothing out of something. That's always been what you've been able to do. And it hasn't come easy. It's been through challenges, but you've been able to move forward. And so this last card is from my Earth Magical deck. And the magic that Spirit is reminding you that you have, and for this current battle that you're going through, is to ground yourself, to ground your energy, to see yourself as this tree. You're an ancient soul. You've been here before, and you have so many roots that go deep. You are a bridge from heaven to earth, which is what trees are all about. You're that connection. And so even though this current challenge that you're facing, or this current situation that you're involved in your community, Spirit is saying to you that your magic is to stay grounded and to be like this tree, because no matter what, you will not be uprooted from your plan. You will always be supported by the infinite universe. Your branches will always continue to multiply. It's like, it reminds me of, we used to do this chant when I was in my sorority in college at West Virginia, aka we don't die, we just multiply. And that is who you are. You just multiply. Your seed will continue to grow because you plant good seeds. Your earth magic, and your magic is to stay grounded, to stay centered, and to not let anybody or any circumstance uproot you, because you have your purpose on this planet is bigger than you could ever imagine. And people don't realize when they go against you, they're going against the infinite, and they don't have a chance at all. And it's going to show up and backfire on them. That's your messages. I'm Sheilah Smiley, and I'm done.
Wow. Well, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge myself.
Yeah.
And I so much appreciate, and I am so grateful for both myself and for this opportunity that you've presented to let me see myself and hear myself in a way that I've understood for a long time. And so many of those messages resonated. I mean, in just the precise words and metaphor systems. But just, I mean, really, you changed my life today. You really shifted my whole energy. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. You are seen, brother. You are heard. You are felt. And every life that you change, you are just, your cup, I hear Spirit saying your cup will never run over, because you continue to give from a filled well. And the more you give out, the more it'll be replenished, and you are divinely protected. Anyone who goes up against you, they're going to reap uh, they're going to reap what they sow. And the answers and the right people will always come to your aid, to support you. This is who you are. And a tree is always supported, and a tree knows its season, and you're in your best season right now.
Mhm. So there's so many threads we could follow. I want to start with the tree, because for 4 years I sundanced on the Pine Ridge Indian reservation.
Oh.
And and the tree is the center. And we put our prayer flags in the branches and our prayer ties around the trunk. And when we're pierced with buffalo bone, we're connected to that tree. And we
Mm.
go to the tree 4 times um, and pray and go back. And the fourth time, we pull ourselves free. Um,
Mm.
Step back, and we have our eagle bone whistle and
Yeah.
our fan and our sage. And it's this just unbelievably powerful ceremony. And
Wow.
what happens when you step back and you're released is, for me, it was my first genuine and complete sense of freedom, that there
Mm.
is a truly infinite possibility space that's created by that tree of life, that axis mundi, that there is a center point between the head and the heart and the gut, between the sky and
Mm.
the earth. And what really resonated through me as you went through that is that in my evolution now, I get to be that tree for other people, to connect with, and then ultimately understand their own freedom and explore every possibility space because they have a relationship to a tree.
Mm. Wow. 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 Whew. Mm. Yes. Wow. I'm just buzzing with energy right now. I gotta ground myself before I fly out of here today.
I want to say a couple other things just because the metaphor systems you've evoked are so powerful. Um, Aquaman is the connection of the solar and the lunar. He's
Mm.
the superhero, the solar warrior, and he's in the water element of the lunar, the reflective, the compassionate, the empathetic, the intuitive is the water.
Yeah.
And he marshals that, the forces and the powers of the undersea, of the night sea journey of the unconscious mind,
Yeah.
which is all the depth of the oceans. When you talked about the woman, to me, that was Echo in the Echo and Narcissus myth. If you look at the painting of Narcissus looking at the water and being obsessed with his own reflection and
Mm-hmm.
turning into a
A
flower,
flower. Yeah.
he couldn't hear the call of the echo.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is, and this is true, this is something that I've been speaking with some of my mentors about and my
Mm-hmm.
guides about,
Mm-hmm.
is that I have done a lot of deep work after really hitting bottom on my narcissism,
Mm-hmm.
and just awakening to that voice of echo and that willingness to see my blind spots and shadows and to hear how those had resonated in the world, um, has really has created that, has transformed that narcissism, that shadow, into the lead in alchemy, into the liberation vision. And that really, which is the gold. And it is that system of Narcissus and Echo, of Eros and Psyche, that create the movement. And really the center point of all of this work that we're co-creating is transformation only happens in dialogue. If it was the tree alone, there would be no growth. If it was the human alone, separated, divorced, not recognizing the tree, there would be no transformation, no growth. And transformation really only happens in dialogue. And you're just, and then one other thing, I mean, there's so many things that came from this.
Yes, I love it. I'm listening. I'm feeling it. Please share.
Another is that you evoked that sense of blindness, and how challenging it is for people to see themselves. And that is really the magic of going from the mirror, which is really a false reflection. Nobody can really see themselves in a mirror. Nobody can really hear themselves in recording. You can only see and hear yourself through another person. My favorite superhero growing up was always Daredevil, because he was the blind seer. And I always understood at a very deep level that you did have to go blind in order to see. You did have to go insane, go crazy in order to be rational. As Rimbaud said, it's a long, sustained, gigantic, massive disorder and rational disordering of the senses that transforms the poet into the seer. So I've been, my mission has been to gather all of the saints, seers, sages, and shaman who are currently unrecognized, unnoticed, walking this earth, all the bodhisattva, into this community. And so thank you so much for joining me.
Wow. I'm so touched, moved, and inspired. And this is you, you know? And and you see that he's blinded. His eyes are covered. And what you said is so perfect. Can you see? I'm gonna send you these cards,
Okay.
by the way.
Yeah, please do. And talk about the other
But
images. I
should I
see the
come
flying
down
horse.
or up? Should I come
A
down or
little bit up, a little bit up, and just close to the camera. Yeah, it's just getting into focus. A tiny bit higher. Yeah, it's really getting to focus now. Okay. Um, if you could just speak to the other images, I'd like to hear them.
sure? And this card?
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, the number on the card is truly significant. 52, and 50 in the 50 in numerology and in the Bible in general is a very powerful number. 5 signifies adventure, independence, strong will. It it's getting out of the box and moving past limitations. And the number 2 signifies partnership, uh, cooperation. Where there's 2 or 3, there's power. It signifies moving forward in yin and yang, the divine feminine and divine masculine operating in peace, harmony, and balance. And so when you put these together, you got yourself, you have the unicorn who's all about magic. And, the unicorn has its wings, and the unicorn knows who needs help. The unicorn flies in magically and just appears to that person who really needs him, and flies that person to safety or to rejuvenation. And then you have the butterfly, which is all about transformation. And you have been able to go through the stages of the dark night of the soul, and to be that caterpillar. You were once Saul. Saul was a narcissist. Saul thought he was doing right, right? So narcissists think that they are doing right. Narcissists think that their way is the way. Saul was murdering all the people of God, because that was what he was told to do. He was the most fiercest soldier and murdering, and he was good at what he did. You are good at what you do, whether it is for the darkness or for the light. You are really efficient. You're very confident in your delivery. So was Saul, and you said it perfectly. Saul was blinded by his own narcissism, by his own reflection of, I am the perfect soldier. There is no one who can defeat me. I will do the will and kill all the Jews. This is what Saul was doing. And Jesus and God, the Holy Spirit, had to knock him off the donkey on his way to the road of Damascus. He met the true and living Spirit, and the Spirit knocked him off and blinded him. So I was blind for 3 days. So you are absolutely right. Your superhero being the daredevil who was blind and only saw from, as I said to you, you see people from their third eye, and from your third eye. And Saul went through that transformation, the butterfly. He went from being blind to being able to see. And before he got his physical sight, he had to see spiritually what he was doing, who he was. And then he had to see that he was now worthy. He was so devastated and hurt when he woke up to what he was doing, to how he was murdering the Jews, and that he was not doing the will of God. And when he saw that and began to feel the compassion, that's when his physical sight started to come back. But then he had to go through the dark night of the soul and realize that he is worthy of now God's love. He is worthy of now turning all of the devastation into humiliation and transformation. And he became the opposite of Saul and became Paul, and then began to revolutionize the work of love. And so you are revolutionizing, transforming lives, because you had to transform your own life, even your marriage. You and your wife went through a lot. She went through a lot with you, and you guys, but you stayed together through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you didn't just transform yourself, you had to transform how you relate to her, how you relate to your children, how you relate to the world around you. And you were able to use, you even, the ladybug is in here. The ladybug is about beauty. And even though she's small, she knows her power and her purpose. And you're able to come into a person's life who feel small. I don't have a following. I don't have a big social media following. I know that I'm big inside and God sees me as big, but when you look at me on paper, I'm shit. I'm useless. I don't know. And you come into that person's life and you see their bigness and you inspire them to see their bigness, and they're able to move from that viewing, because it's only when we change the viewing of ourselves and we're able to evolve to who we really are. And you do that, and the energy of there's a scroll in here. It's like the person, you don't come to people who haven't done the work, because there's no conversation to be had. You've done your own work and they do their work, and then you present this scroll to them. At the bottom of this circle is a scroll, and this whole circle is affinity. You create the affinity, the infinite possibilities for other people's lives. And then there's this flowing energy. You teach them how to flow. Bruce Lee, I love Bruce Lee. He always talked about being in the flow and not going against the flow. And there's all this reciprocity. There's all of this magic that takes place when you blindly support people in their own evolution. And you have to remember to continue to do that for yourself. And here's the thing, it's less effort now. You don't have to do it with the effort that you did it before, because every human being that you engage with, David, they're now holding the space for you. You're being held up by the same energy by which you put out. I'm holding a space for you now. Clara is holding a space for you now. We may not be there physically with you, as Martin Luther King said. I may not get there with you, but I am with you, and we are all holding you up, and you're going to continue to go further. When Moses was in the battle of his life, the Israels were losing the battle, and God told Moses, look what's in your hand, a staff. And Moses held that staff up, and God told him, as long as you hold the staff up, the Israelites will win the battle. And Moses' arms, he held that staff for days and days and days, and the Israelites were winning the battle. They were excited, they were thanking God, but Moses' arms got tired, and it began to come down, and the Israelites began to lose the battle, and they couldn't figure out why. And then Joshua noticed that it was Moses' hand that was coming down, and as long as his hand was coming down, the Israelites were losing the battle. And all of them gathered around, and they began to lift Moses' arm up one by one. They begin to support this divine leader so that their people can be saved. And this is who you are. You are not in this battle alone. We are all holding up your magic, because we know that your magic will touch generations to come. It will create a legacy that will be like none other on this planet. So you are being held up by the infinite all across this planet. The seeds of love that you continue to plant will always multiply and grow.
I'm just so moved. I'm holding this in my heart for a moment.
Yes, I'm holding it with you. Take your time.
So, from the moment you showed me that card, I had a very clear vision of Moses, and there were a few reasons for that, and a few messages that I had with that. Moses visited me on my first traditional Lakota vision quest called Humblecha. He was one of my major guides. He stood up on a hill in the distance, and he, with his long flowing beard and his staff, and he lifted up and turned into an eagle and then a bear, and
Oh
then
my
he
God,
he
DL.
he disappeared. And he's really stayed with me as a guide for a few reasons. He wasn't able to enter the promised land because of his anger, because of his rage. And that's been part of my deepest work, is to, like Daredevil, actually letting go of my fear was fairly easy. That was a lot of people's challenges that I see out there, are working through their fear, accepting their fear, learning from their fear, letting their fear lead them to the point where they can become courageous and then become fearless. That's never been my drama or challenge. Um, what I see when I see injustice, disrespect, dishonoring, abuse, my immediate reaction used to be anger, and I used to see that as a real righteous anger. And I would also turn that on myself as anger at myself for not being enough, for being too stupid to see, being too blind, being too not big enough. Um, there was a story my mom told me from when I was very young. There was this bully down the street, and he would beat up my little brother, and I would defend my little brother, and then he'd beat me up.
Mm.
Um, and Charlie Kramer, this is you if you're out there.
Yeah.
Because there's this is part of the interesting story. I My mom went and knocked on his door, and his mom came to the door and said, my mom said, Charlie's beating up my children. He's a bully. We need to address that. And Charlie's mom said to my mom, well, David tortures Charlie intellectually. And when you talked about Saul and that ability, and how that ability can harm people. And so when Charlie, as a bully, there's in this very significant myth cycle of the Dene people.
Mm.
Um, it's called When the Two Went to Their Father. The
Mm.
two were Monster Slayer and Child Born of Water. And Monster Slayer was the older brother, the solar hero. Child Born of Water was the lunar. And they mostly do the same things. They travel to the realm of Skyfather. They get the magic feather to remove the monsters, the shadows from the community. They bring the boon or the panacea back. And under the guidance of Unchimaka, I'm combining languages. That's the Lakota word for the Earth Mother. Um,
Wow.
and but there's one when they come to this monster long arm.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Slayer says, let's shoot our magical arrows. And Child Born of Water, for the first time, speaks up and says, no, let's sing to him. And they sing to Long Arm, and that's how they go through that challenge. And that is really right now my creative quest is towards mastery of using my voice in a way that transforms, heals,
Mm.
um, and sometimes challenges, but in a way that is always supportive of myself and the other person,
Mm-hmm.
and is not in a way that is disrespectful
Yes.
or, in a sense, untruthful. Because if I'm only talking to that part of the person who
Mm-hmm.
is expressing anger at me, hatred for me, then I'm not seeing them as a whole person. So that is what you touched on, really brought to the surface this really my current creative quest and my co-creative journey.
Yes. Yes. And I am so blessed to be on your new journey. Thank you for allowing this sacred space, David. Thank you for allowing my gifts um, into your heart and for allowing me to be a blessing to you because you are a blessing to this planet. And thank you for continuing to be a conscious human being willing to look at yourself and to see what no longer serves you so that you can continue to serve. Thank you.
So this was a remarkable and very unexpected demonstration.
Well, that's what happens
And
to Sheila Smiley, okay?
yes, yes. There's a term in a tradition more to life called a life shock, and a particular type of life shock. There are three types. There's the exposing life shock, which shows you your authenticity, brings you to it. There's a limiting life shock that shows you your humanity if you're open to it. And there's the evoking life shock that shows you your lovability, which is both your ability to love and to accept love. And this was very much of an evoking life shock. Um, so I would love for you to share with our audience here a little bit more about yourself and your journey and how you came into this wonderful, magical, creative power.
Thank you so much, David. So gosh, I have a mom and dad like most people. And I always like to let my audience know, in case you haven't noticed, I am from a Black family. So let's just clear that up. Like, I don't want anybody to not think that, okay? That's very important. But I'm the middle child. And so my mom, I grew up with four sisters and one brother, and so I was always the different child. I like to say that I kept wondering if these people really were my family. At a very early age, I was always conscious of God, and always conscious that I'm supposed to be doing something important. And but I've always desired to be an actor. From the time I came out of my mom's womb, I was always performing, dancing, singing, making people laugh, and but also talking to God at the same time. And I would have these, as a child, I was afraid of everything, David. Everything scared me, which is really shocking because of how I am now. But I grew up in a very violent. My mom, unfortunately, she went through a very tough period. She was an alcoholic. Her father, my whole family suffered mental health issues, alcoholism, drugs, and so I grew up around intense violence. I always say my family was like the Black mob. My mom had seven brothers, and they were kick ass, and they were the Black mob. And so I witnessed all kinds of violence. And even I witnessed the death of my father. My father was shot in the mouth by my mother's brother, my uncle, when I was 5 years old. And it was one of the most horrific experiences. And I was so young, but I knew that, and my father was so good to me and my brother and my family. But, I grew up without him. And that experience led my mom down the road of alcoholism, in addition to it being in her blood. And then she was made to testify in support of her murderous brother by by her family, her parents. And years later, that would show up in our life as her being severely bipolar.
Mm.
And she was a beautiful woman and loved us so hard. But because of her issues, she would beat the hell out of us. I mean, I grew up, they would say child abuse, but we suffered severe beatings from her own pain. And of course, I didn't really understand it, but I loved my mom, and I knew she loved us, and I knew she was sick. When I was 13, I stopped her from committing suicide. And I was always my mom's go-to child. Like, I was always that child who saved and rescued her, who always prayed with her, who I was the spiritual person in my family. And, I really carried my family, the burden. And so I knew that God had a purpose for my life. And, years before my mom passed, um, she always wanted me to stay with her. I was the only child that me and my brother. So my sisters, they have their own dad, and my brother, who was like my twin, we had the same father. So we were the only ones my mom didn't kick out of the house. She had very contentious relationships with my older siblings, and she wanted me to stay with her forever, and I couldn't. And we had a very challenging relationship because I always challenged her, like, you need to do better. And I was the only child who challenged her that way, and she didn't like it. But she was my ace. And when she died, like, I wanted to move to New York and pursue my entertainment career, and she was like, no, I don't want you to leave. And New York is the devil's place and all of this. She was a very spiritual person. And I grew up, because of the violence, I grew up fearing everything, that she would die in a murderous way. And so when I was younger, I didn't know this. Spirit animals and spirits from beyond would visit me. My father spirit would visit me all the time. And because I was scared, I would, you know, um, plead the blood of Jesus for them to get away. And like all my life, I grew up with these animals coming to me in shadow form and lying on my chest, and, being like eagles and wolves, and they would literally lie on my chest. And because I grew up a born again Christian in the Baptist church and Pentecostal church, and so I considered these demons. This is all they would teach us in the church, that these are demons. And so I thought they were demons, and I was always chasing them away and sleeping with the light on. And I did not know what this was, David. And so obviously, I know now, but these things were always with me and around me. And I would always get visitations from spirits. And again, I thought these were demons. And so I was sort of this performing child, but very afraid of the dark, because when I would turn the lights off, they would appear to me. So, years later, being a born again Christian has always been a part of my life. I was in the ministry, a minister and evangelist, preaching, teaching Sunday school. And then when my mom died, all of this just did not seem like my relationship with God and the ascended masters and Jesus will always be intact. But the religiosity of being a Christian no longer seemed to connect with me anymore. Her passing was very profound for me, and she came to me before she died. And so when she died, I left Cleveland. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to go to New York and pursue my entertainment career. And I did that, and I left. I came to New York in 1999 and started doing stand-up comedy. Had a very successful beginning, doing acting. I've been in films with a lot of celebrities. And, but my physical relationship with Source started changing. Like, I immediately got involved in churches in New York, but then it didn't feel right anymore. But I would force myself to go to church because I'm a Christian and this is what Christians do. And I'm a very powerful Christian. I used to be a minister, blah, blah, blah. But every time I would go into a church, it just did not feel right anymore. And again, mind you, my relationship with God felt right, but not my relationship with the religion. And so, I was a member of Times Square Church, the biggest church in New York City, probably in the world. It's a huge church. And one day, we're at the altar. It's a very powerful, people from all over the country come to this church in Times Square, and we're praying and worshiping God, and the spirit is high, and it's so many people. The one thing about this church, people are very territorial, New York City, but we're at the altar, and I don't like to be in crowds. But I was like, I'm going to get out of my inhibition and follow spirit. I'm going up to the altar, and all of these people were around me. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't like the smell. It doesn't smell good. I can't get in the spirit. Anyway, so we're praising God, and, I have my mouth open, and I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, worshiping the Lord. And then something from somebody's mouth, I kid you, I remember it like it was yesterday, David, went into my mouth. They were screaming, and I guess it was spit. And you have to know I'm a fanatical germaphobe, okay? I mean, like Jerry Seinfeld germaphobe. I will throw stuff away that hit the ground, okay? And when I was just like gagging at the altar, like, oh my God, somebody spit where my mouth. And I'm like pleading the blood of Jesus. And I'm like, I gotta go. So eventually I left that, when I left service, the next day I woke up with just a very nasty infection and sick, and I was vomiting, and it was just awful. And that led me to stop physically going to church. And then that led me to really discover what it was. Because I was battling with myself. What does it mean for me as an active Christian? My whole family knew, this is our life. We're Christians, and everybody from Cleveland knew, and that I'm a Christian. So this is how I was known in the Christian community. And so I was going through this transformation, but my identity was like, no, you can't, like, what is it going to mean for you to leave the church and not be in the church anymore as a Christian? How is that going to look? Well, I didn't know that I was being called to leave the religion of Christianity. And I connected that to, that's going to mean I can't have a relationship with God. So it was this internal battle that I was experiencing. And I just stopped going to church altogether, stopped praying altogether, and just, kind of numbed myself actively, spiritually. Like, I'm a good person, so I'm not one of those people, I'm going to go out and, fuck everybody. Now that I'm no longer, I'm going to smoke weed, I'm going to drink, I'm going to prostitute. Like, that is like, I love my body. I'm a clean person. That is so not me. So I was really just a boring person who loved to laugh and dance and, all of that kind of stuff. And then, I remember seeing and I was still doing comedy, still having fun, still doing all of that, building my comedy career. And I remember seeing a show on Oprah where Gary Zukav, I'm sure you know Gary Zukav, who was doing a show about spiritual partnership. And
I'm not familiar.
you don't know Gary Zukav? Oh my
No.
God. He's a powerful thought leader, very zen, and he's almost like, he's not on the huge level of Wayne Dyer, but he's in that conversation, that lineage of the Wayne Dyer. And he was doing a show on spiritual partnership on Oprah, and he was talking about him and his beloved, and they have this amazing spiritual relationship. And I was married at the time to a British West Indian. And so, we were married for 9 years. And so our marriage had sort of become this roommate type of situation. We loved and respected each other, but passion and, the sex, everything was done. We were just literally living like roommates. And I said to myself, that is what I want. A spiritual partnership. Yes, that's yummy. I want a spiritual partner to create transformation on this planet. And I was at the time going through transformation. You heard of Landmark? It's a very powerful, yes. So I did all the work. I'm actually a Landmark leader teaching their leadership programs. And so I had lost my brother in 2015. He was my only brother. And when he died, that sent me into a very deep questioning phase, questioning God. I didn't want to live anymore. I started studying to find out if suicide was really a sin. Like, when people commit suicide, is it intentional? And is this an actual sin? The church teaches that it's a sin. So I just went down this whole path of the dark night of the soul and really finding out who God is. Why are things the way they are? And so I started doing the transformation work at Landmark, and really just focusing on removing all of these identities that I had lived in, layers of distortion. And I really didn't know who I was anymore without the auspices of Christianity and all of that stuff that went with that. So when I made that declaration, and I was spiritually evolving, but I couldn't quite understand what I was going through, spirit just opened up. You know, God, the universe, the infinite knows how to deal with us, even when we don't know. And so at that time, my acting career and comedy career was doing very well. I had several agents, and I had started auditioning for SNL. And so I was like, you know, I'm doing well, but spiritually, I was suffering. And I didn't know how to articulate that, because God is my breath. Like I will jump, and I've always taken leaps of faith, and God catches me. I don't think about money. Has never been something that stopped me from doing what I want to do, because I'm like, okay, you're my Jehovah Jireh, and I'm going after this. I don't have the money, and I know you're going to take care of me. And it's always been like that. And so for me to live life without activating my spirituality is death for me. And so I was going through this period of just really, where am I spiritually? Every church I went to, I felt a disconnection, and I couldn't understand. I've been in church all my life. Why don't I feel good in church? And then I started judging the experience and judging myself for not like wanting to be in church. And I had to transform that through my work through Landmark. And so I was teaching stand-up comedy at one of the biggest acting schools in New York. And I met this incredible human being in an acting class. His name is Lanier. And, you know, he's an actor and he's a comedian. And we just kind of hit it off as really good friends, very handsome dude. And he was attracted to me immediately. He's short. I've never dated short guys. And I was like, okay, he's cute, but you know, you gotta be this tall to be on this ride. That was my ego, right? And so anyway, we hit it off. We were both married at the time. And so long story short, he got a divorce. I'm still married. And we stayed really good friends. So he started taking my stand-up comedy classes and helping. He's a filmmaker, so he's helping me film them. And this dude is completely enamored with me, very attracted to me. And I'm just like annoyed by his attraction, because I'm like, we're just friends and that's it. But we really meshed very well, and we just stayed friends. And then eventually I started wanting to end my marriage, because it just literally was sitting. Like I was married for 5 years in my marriage, David, and I was celibate in my marriage. I'm like, dude, what is this about? And my husband, I'm like, I did not get married to not have sex. I mean, I could be doing this out in the world. And and I used to say to him, you know, who's the Christian in this relationship, me or you? Because he was like hell bent on not being active in the church and stuff. And so it just became this relationship, partnership of roommating. And I was just like, this doesn't work for me anymore. I am a very sexual being. I want to enjoy sex, and I want to have sex, and I want to be in a fulfilling relationship. And I worked hard on trying to get us counseling, because if you look at all the pieces of we got married, you know, in our 30s. And I'm like, this should be perfect. He doesn't have children. I don't have kids. We're not bringing drama into the relationship. So I worked really hard on this connection, because I felt like this should work. It doesn't make any sense for this not to work. Now, it's important to know that when we got married, I knew he was not going to be my life partner. Spirit already showed me that up front. We were each other's karmic lessons. And so I knew that. But once you get in, a woman will always try to make things work. It doesn't matter what. A woman will always try. And that's what I did. Let's get counseling. Let's do things together. I was always the one trying to work things out, because it should have worked. He's a good guy. Even to this day, we love and support each other. Um, but our partnership as husband and wife just was not working. And so at that time, my friend Lanier, I call him Wes, that's what everyone calls him, we start getting closer and hanging out and stuff like that. And I knew that he was really into me. And then one day, he touched me in a way that before, because he's a very affectionate person, he would like hold my hand and I'm just like, get away from me. And then this one time, he kind of touched my hand and my put his hand on my knee, and there were sparks, and it freaked me out. And I was like, what is this, dude? We've been friends for 5 years. I have no feelings for you. Why am I all of a sudden feeling this? And then that led to us continuing to explore, and then it led to this big explosion of us really connecting emotionally and intimately, and then we started this relationship. And I was at the end of my marriage, and so it was crazy. Like these feelings just exploded, and I couldn't believe it. And I'm telling all my closest friends, like, I couldn't stand this dude as a partner. Why am I feeling this way? And then this relationship was magical. It was electric. I had never felt like this before. So long story short, um, we really just hit it strong. And then we had a breakup. Then we got back together, and then once we were in there, like, I had separated from my husband. I moved out. We sold the condo. And we moved on. And then me and Wes, we started this powerful relationship, and we were in there. And then we had a huge breakup, and that breakup led me to another level of the dark night of the soul, because our connection was so strong and electrical. When we broke up, and I broke up with him, it sent me into a very unstable emotional journey. And I'm a very strong emotional woman. Most Black women are, honestly. I mean, I saw my father murdered. I stopped my mom from committing suicide. I stopped a child from being shot in my neighborhood. I'm always this rescuer. I'm very emotionally strong. And what I was experiencing, my ego wouldn't allow me to. And I was doing everything I could to combat these emotions that I had for this person. And then one day I just had a complete breakdown, like a breakdown. And God said, she's ready now, because I had to let go of the ego. I had a breakdown. I cried about it. And then when I came up from that, I had to inquire, Spirit, what is this person? Who is he? Because, David, I've broken up with many guys, many, like, Control Alt Delete, bye Felicia. It's done later. I don't need you, boo. I'm done. It's over. I've been able to do it. When I say to God, this relationship is over, I need you to take this person out of my psychology and my soul, God does it. It's always worked like that. The more I went to Spirit to take this dude out of my soul, the more Spirit shut down. Nothing. Take him out, God, laughing. Take him out, God, laughing. I did everything, fasted, prayed, worked out, dated, nothing. This guy, I couldn't shake him. And so I knew it was something more to our connection because of what I was experiencing. And then, the pain was so deep. It literally, I felt flames in my soul burning, just burning. And I just remember saying, I can't do this anymore. I've lost my mom. I've lost my dad. I lost my brother. I've lost everybody. And then this person, I was like, I just don't want to be here anymore. And I said, God, if you don't show me who this person is, I lifted my window up, David. I was like, I'm going to just jump. I don't even care anymore. And I kid you not, David, this laptop that we're talking on, it was sitting on my table, and it lit up, the laptop. It lit up. It was on. You know how sometimes the laptop fades and the light comes? That happened. I turned around, because my apartment was dark. I turned around, the light on my computer came on, and I walked over to my computer, and I'm crying. And this video came up, and it was called Twin Flames in Separation. And I at that point, I was not interested. I never believed in tarot readers. I never believed, as a Christian, I couldn't, even though secretly I did, like, but I couldn't practice any of that. And so I didn't. Like, you were told soothsayers are witchcraft and tarot reading and healers and all of that. It's not of God. So when this thing popped up on my computer, and it said twin flames and separation, it was a video on YouTube. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm getting ready to delete it. And something is drawing me to it. There was this heart. It was a broken heart. She was holding the image on it was a broken heart in flames, and it was a necklace. And something so deep within me told me to watch this video. And it was an hour and some change, and I watched this video and my mind was blown. This anointed beautiful soul in the video, she's a reader, she's an intuitive. She literally told the story of our connection. And I'm just watching this, like, blowing my mind. And that's when I discovered that I was a twin flame, and that I was in the dark night of the soul during this separation with my twin flame, and he was my twin flame. And I began to spirit just led me down this journey of discovering who I really am and why I've had the wounds of separation, the wounds of, the inner child woundings of my father being murdered. Like, all of these things began to come to me. And, in the church, David, I was deemed a prophet. I was deemed, in church, it was called, and I would do prophecies in the church. But men would not let me minister. I was always ministering around women because it was very male dominated. When I found out who I was, all of the gifts that I had in the church and were labeled prophetic began to surface. And I was no longer bound by the structure of the labels of what the church would allow me to do. And my gifts of clairs began to roar, my gifts of clairaudience, and all of the visions that I had as a child, and all of those animals that I thought were demons were revealed themselves to me, that they were my animal guides, that they were my spirit guides. And my father, who would come to me, said, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wanted you to know that I loved you, and I hated that I had to leave you the way that I did. And it just, this whole deep world opened up. Now, mind you, it was still very painful. I was hurting so bad, but it helped me to understand who I was and who I'm becoming. And the first thing Spirit uh, guided me to was to rebrand myself. And so to combine my gifts now with my comedy gifts, and then the clairvoyant comic was born. And that's who I am becoming. I'm still becoming to this day. And I was able to transform my twin flame connection. We are now in harmonious union. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But we both understand who we are, and we understand what our mission is on this planet. And so we're both committed to living our best lives while making a difference for others and stepping into this limitless abundance that we know is ours.
Mm.
And that's my story.
I need to sit with that for a moment.
Yes, I know.
And there are just also so many parallels in our stories, just so many intertwined threads. It's going to be fascinating when we have some time to really sit together. So I actually have a proposal.
Yeah.
You and Clara and I would love to do a program with the three of us called The Mind, Body, and Spirit of business.
Mm.
And those three aspects, the three of us embody and overlap like a Venn diagram, where um, Clara and my relationship with her, so much of what she does is about that vessel and about creating body memory, making your performance automatic, which liberates you to be free. You really embody the spirit in a way I have never experienced. Your connection with spirit is so deep and so natural. Um, for me, I reached God in the Jewish tradition through my mind. I studied Nietzsche so deeply. I studied Spinoza so deeply. I read Sitting Bull. I read Black Elk. And I
Okay.
understood that the way that there was a path to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I did things like, you know, go out into the woods, take off all my clothes. I had glasses at the time, let myself be blind, go so far that's like, God, if you are out there, like, you're going to frickin', communicate with me. It turned out not to be that simple. um, but, but I did get
I'm
there.
sorry, I have the image right now, David.
you and it was seriously, it was like, okay, you know, 40 days and 40 nights. If that's what it's going to take, that's what it's
Yeah,
going to take. I'm
yeah,
going to do it,
yeah, yeah.
um, you know, whatever it takes. Um, I was so desperate for the world to have meaning. I
Wow.
refused to, I refused to settle. I refused to settle for a world that was mechanical.
Yeah.
There was just no way that that could possibly be the case. And again, that was intellectually, but apparently from a very, very early age, this was in my preschool teacher's notes that my parents kept. I did have this rage problem. I would stand on tables and yell, I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And
Wow.
and yet, and they actually said this about me, when I would be out in nature, I would be so calm. And I remember that, like, I literally remember the ground cover outside Green Acres, this preschool I went to. I remember every plant. I remember the Indian pipe and um the ajuga and the names of
Wow,
all
David.
you know the plants and our four-legged friends, and
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
standing nation, all of my relations. So I
Did
there's
was
just
your mom was your family religious?
um no, very secular Jews, in
Okay.
that way of um and my mom, it's so interesting. So I've been diagnosed as severely bipolar.
Okay.
Um and so I really also relate to that part of your story.
Yeah.
Because I also knew that these visions I was receiving had meaning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew if I followed the path that my doctors, when I would be institutionalized, would tell me, that I would lose all of that information that was being given to me. And so it's one of the reasons I pursued that path, that indigenous path, because those were the only books where there were guides who said, um, this spirit came to me, this member of the flying nation, came to me, woodpecker told me this, and when they were telling these people, and and they took that seriously
Yes.
and interpreted it, then they had these enormous benefits. And I said, okay, there's just something we are fundamentally missing in this culture. And
Wow.
so I also did that work. And there's another of my mentors who you're going to meet. And that to me is the joy of this platform,
Yeah.
is what's going to happen when all of these people come together. So Howard Teich, this alchemist who Clara knows, I don't know if you've met him yet,
Mhm.
um, is he actually retraced the historical roots of that separation of the twin flames. So when Romulus killed
Really? Oh
Remus,
my gosh.
so the twin heroes, Child Born of Water and Monster Slayer, were also Gilgamesh and Enoki.
Are you
Gilgamesh,
serious?
yeah, went to the bottom of the ocean and brought up the plant that cures the fear of death and gave it to his people. So there are all of these stories, and that was the first recorded story in
Wow.
cuneiform that we were able to interpret because of the Rosetta Stone. What Howard showed me is that when Romulus killed Remus and founded Rome, he created the national security state, and he broke the chain, that the tradition that had taught us to overcome the fear of death. We lost the medicine.
Oh
So
wow.
what was that plant? Who knows what that plant was? But
Yeah.
what did Rome do? They conquered. They went to the Black Forest
Yeah.
and said, okay, all of these indigenous people of the Black Forest, you're now subjugated. Cologne, the city, was called Colony. They went to where the Druids were and the Celts, that had these traditions of these who could speak with the plants. They came to the New World, and everywhere they went, they conquered the people who did not fear death. And what they put in place was a system 100% built on fear of death. And that was
Wow.
at the core of my relationship with my mother, was that her mom died when she was young,
Mm.
um, and of breast cancer. And more than anything else, she did not want to leave her children without a mother.
Mm.
And that fear and she wanted so much for us to have a close family. And she did so many wonderful things, that what it actually took was for me to go through my night sea journey, which was um, one of my biggest ones, was this journey through Montreal, where
Mm.
I had been studying Kabbalah, I've been studying alchemy. I was touched by an angel physically. An angel
Wow.
reached its finger into my mind and took my thoughts, which were Yud Hey Vud Hey, the tetragram in Kabbalah, took my thoughts and turned those into a circle of light.
Wow.
And it rose above my head into a halo and disappeared. And I was called to go to Montreal on this adventure.
Mm.
Anyway, I don't know how many days I wandered the city, changed clothes, like was naked for times, went through the subway, all of these
Are
experiences.
you
I
serious?
was living in it all. I was time traveling. I mean, I was going through completely different
Wow.
reality. And of course, the
And
doctors,
you did this alone?
yes. Well, I picked up a friend of mine in Toronto,
Okay.
and we went to Montreal. I was in a band, and
Oh my God.
yeah, we were touring, so I had friends in all these cities, and we were on MTV. I have a kind of a parallel path of wanting to be in
Wow.
showbiz. We had a video on MTV and all that. Um, and I um in going through this world, and I was chased by the devil. I was literally interacting with the devil in
Yeah.
corporeal form at times and not at other times.
Okay.
Um, I time traveled back into World War II. Uh,
Wow.
Dalai Lama, I was interacting with this huge level. There was, aliens on the other side of the planet. At some point, I was actually incarcerated. Um, the police finally picked me up. I was charged with criminal mischief. Long story. I had to navigate a prison system, like, you know, put
Wow.
put in the showers, things like that with a guy named Elvis Hitler who wanted me to be his bitch. Um, this, you know, but I I navigated that world,
Yeah.
and when I came back, fortunately, I had a shrink from high school who's wonderful. So I just have to tell a little bit more of this story. And I've never really told somebody the complete, certainly never publicly,
Incredible.
but I really want to share this with you because you just shared your story in such a evoking, compelling way. So when I was in high school, I first knew that there was something, quote, "wrong or different" when I was reading the Sunday paper and the funnies, the comics, as we used to call them, um, before your time. Um,
No, I remember the comics. Okay.
and, Lucy pulled the football away from Charlie Brown, and I was like, "That was so cruel," and he wound up on his back. And then I read The Wizard of Id, and there was this guy with hair in the dungeon, and Hagar the Horrible was conquering other people, and I was like, "The cruelty," and I just sat there and I started weeping
Mm.
in our living room, just sitting there, Um, and my mom came in, and I was like, "There's something wrong. I can't take it. I can't take how sad this world is."
Yeah.
And we had a very close friend up the street, my mom's best friend, who actually, she was a social worker, and she said, "I can refer you to a therapist." So she found Dr. Hutchinson, who totally was amazing. But so he he brought, when I was then hospitalized, when I came back from Montreal. Um, and the band broke up really because I scared the hell out of everybody. I mean, they were
Okay.
like,
You freaked
um,
them out, David.
I scared everybody else. I wasn't scared because I was like, I saw this, but this was what I was getting to, was that this also really was the seed of transformation for my
Yeah.
mother, because
Oh,
I
mom.
sat down with
Okay.
my
Okay.
parents,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I said there was a wound that was within our family that they knew unconsciously. I had been abused by a babysitter when my dad was an epidemiologist. We went to France. They had
Oh,
this babysitter, and it
wow.
was done in this way where my brother and sister were also in the room. The lights were off. Um, and he told this. So he climbed into my bed, and he put his hand under my pajamas, and my dad used to tell these makeup stories. Um, and we loved makeup stories. I mean, my dad is still so creative.
Can you just say what's a makeup story?
So he would have each of us put three we would each put one thing into the story, and he would tell the story. So, my brother might say a unicorn, my sister might say a talking flower, and I might say, you know, um, a motorized toilet, just I
Okay.
was also a middle child and was always trying to be transgressive. So, you know, so, and he would tell these stories, and most of the stories were about the Knights of the Oblong Table. Sir
Wow.
Lancelot, Sir Prancelot, Sir Dancelot, Sir Ants in the
Wow.
Pants a lot.
Yeah.
And they would go on these adventures. And so we said to this babysitter, tell us a makeup story. Um, well, this makeup story he told, and he was dark, not East Asian, probably Indian,
Okay.
Pakistani,
Okay.
eh, not sure, but this is just, part of the whole experience of the memory. And he got in my bed and put his hands on my genitals and told this story of a brother and a sister went out for a walk and they came to a wall and they looked over the wall, and on the other side of the wall was the devil, the
Mm.
devil, the devil, the devil. And he kept repeating that word, the devil. And this, if I went through a program that was similar to Landmark, it's called More to Life. Um, I was actually brought into it as entrepreneur in residence by my very dear friend, uh, Bill Thatcher, who's also another person you're going to meet. And you're going to meet Warren Kahn, who's one of the More to Life senior trainers, just wonderful people in this.
Nice.
But they have a process called transderivation, and where you take a life shock. We just talked about this evoking life shock, and you keep working your way back. What was the compulsive repetition? What was the source of that compulsive repetition? Where you responded and you responded. And I really got to that very early wound.
Wow.
I was in second grade.
When this
And
happened?
when that happened, yeah, when we were in France, I was in second grade. And in the mythical stories, in what one thing that Howard taught me about alchemical depth psychology is that there are two wounds of the Fisher King. There's the sexual wound, the genital wound, and the creative wound. Two
Mm.
separate wounds. And what my challenge was, my creative quest, is always the creative wound,
Yeah.
which is completely intertwined with the sexual wound.
Yeah.
Um, and because the libido is the creative force,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
for men and women.
Yes. Yes.
um, so the so in going through this, so I went to a week-long program called Way of a Warrior. And there's a code that we don't talk much about the program because we really want other people to experience it. It is the most amazing 7 days
Wow.
anybody will go through in terms of and I just don't even want to talk about how mind-blowing it is. Like the whole time, as I said, I'm very much
When did you do it?
in the life of the mind. This was August 2019.
Oh my God, David. Wow.
Okay. August 2019. So I went through this 1 week program, and the whole time I was like, oh my God, this Brad Brown is a genius. Dr. K. Bradford Brown is the one who designed this. And I was just in awe the entire time. And I'll show you a little mini doc I made about it that I
Oh,
did before.
wow.
I'll share that. But I mean, everybody, like, I cannot believe he put together this sequence of processes and events, and this was just like, this is, but
Wow.
at the very end, we essentially write our mission statement, our personal mission statement. And mine was, I will tell the story of how we created a new world together.
Oh.
And that was my taking on the role of storyteller that
Mm,
would only tell healing stories.
mm. Wow, David. Oh my God. It's all here. This is what this scroll is. I'm just there's no conversation that's happening on the planet like this. It's I mean, I feel like we have past lives together.
Well, we all know that time and space is an illusion. And so our past lives together right now and always.
Yeah. When you were talking about how the effect that 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 when you the Lucy and the Charlie Brown, when you were watching the show, and Hagar, and you just started bawling, it reminded me when I was a child, I didn't know what an empath was.
Mm,
And I was one of the most sensitive. I didn't like my sensitivity. I hated that I was sensitive. My mother used to always say, "You're so sensitive." And I was. I cried or took on everybody's pain. And this is why I've always been the voice for the voiceless, and I fight for the underdog. And my first experience was I saw Tommy Lee Jones in the Executioner song. This movie had such a profound impact. I was like 10 years old, 9 or 10, and he was uh, basically he was I don't know why I'm having a mind freeze, but when they kill you because you're a prisoner, he what's I'm literally freaking out. The death he received that he got the death penalty.
mm,
So he was this criminal, but he had this good heart. He was a guy who was always on the wrong side of the law, but it was weird. He had this good heart, and
mm,
he was always doing crime. He was always doing crime. He got out of prison and he went back to a life of crime, robbing stores and stuff like that. And then, long story short, he actually got the death penalty, and he was in a chair. He got the electric chair, and I watched the whole movie. And when they got to that point, my mom, the whole family was in there watching it, and when he started shaking as they killed him, I just bawled. I mean, I literally just bawled. I ran out of the room. My siblings were laughing at me, and my mom, she ran after me. And I held this pain for 5 days crying about this character in
mm,
this movie. It was awful. And I couldn't understand why I took this so personal. And I told my mom it reminded me of my father, because that's all I could think of as a child, like his death. But as I got older, and I remember this like it was yesterday, it takes me back to my empathic energy. And one of the things that I learned about myself is I stopped watching sad movies because and biopics really get me. And I don't watch movies on racism because what it does to my soul is it's not worth it, because it's hard for me to recover. I've gotten a lot better, but I don't like seeing people suffer. Now, I do like justice. because I hate murderers. I'm going to be honest. I don't like murderers. I like to see people get justice when it is actually proven that they are the perpetrators. But I don't like suffering. And that was, as a child, that was so, I couldn't understand me. And we had just moved to a place where we got bused. I got bused as a kid. I was going to an all-white school, and I used to get brutalized, David, for being Black in an all-white school. And I couldn't understand why I'm crying over this white man who was a criminal, and he got the death penalty because he was a criminal. And it left something with me. And I was also sexually abused by my sister's boyfriend and my grandfather. And it was awful. And because I speak up, I speak up. And my grandmother, I exposed him. He was awful. And this man literally turned me upside down and nobody came to my rescue in my family, David. My uncles, when they found out, they wanted to kill him, but my grandmother, I couldn't believe my grandmother did not come to my rescue. And my mother was in her bipolar outbreak, so she really couldn't do anything. And when I exposed him, instead of people rushing to save me, this man grabbed me and he took my legs and he started busting my head against the floor, just beating me, and nobody would stop him. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't understand. As tough as my family was and tough as my grandmother was, but she was beat her whole life by my grandfather, who she divorced. And I'm looking at this guy, and all I see is stars because he's busting my head against the floor. I'm 12 years old. And I close my eyes and I say, God, just protect me. And when my mother did come to, she did jump on him and try to stop him. So one of the things that I do is I protect kids. I run marathons to save children. And when I used to teach in the inner city, I could recognize the signs of a sexually abused child. And I used to do that work when I was in Cleveland. So, yeah, I feel you. I just wanted you to know, I feel you on so many levels.
So you said something about no conversations like this happening right now in the world. There's a video that I posted with a conversation I had with Marianne Williamson. And it's about curating the public conversation, the global conversation, and how Oprah used to do that.
Yeah.
And how she would hold space with her empathy for people like us. And I want to just switch for one moment. For one thing, first, I really want to acknowledge you for sharing that story, and the courage of sharing that. And I took a moment to acknowledge myself earlier. I really want just to say how healing that was for me to hear that you also have done that mapping of your wounds and your stories, because one of one of the deepest revelations is that every wound contains a gift, and it only contains a gift if you are willing to open it up. You can't let it just scar over, then the gift is going to stay in there. You have to open it and open it and open it. And once you really have taken in that gift, then you can let it heal. And I have a friend, Colleen Cotter, another person you're going to meet. She's an intuitive psychic real estate agent. She's yeah. They don't talk about scars in their family. They talk about stories, and they actually call their scars stories, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So this is how we acknowledge somebody in mortal life.
I
So
receive it.
to,
Yeah. I receive it and give it right back to you.
thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much.
Um, one thing also that I want to tell, and I just went and canceled a meeting I had at the top of the hour. I want to keep going until you have to until you need to go. But
Yes.
uh, I I want to just tell you one other really, to me, just beautiful aspect of the way you present yourself. It brought me back to a moment in Bill Thatcher's program um, on community building that he would do in prisons. And I joined him as a guest at San Quentin with all
Wow.
of
You
these.
are in St. Quentin.
Yeah, for
You
3 days.
badass, David. You are badass. Anybody can come and survive to tell.
Well, that's what was amazing about it. Over the course of those 3 days, we created a community of individuals, of free individuals who I trusted them. I would have trusted them with my children in
Yes.
a way that clearly my parents shouldn't have trusted a babysitter, and you shouldn't have trusted a relative, right? It's that. But when you actually build authentic community and go through these 4 phases that Bill talks about in the interview, which I'll share with you, I don't want to get into that. But there was a moment in San Quentin that I recalled when you told your story, which was one of the facilitators of this community building workshop was a woman.
Mhm.
And she also talked about a time when she had been raped. And one of the men in this community building workshop stood up and started walking toward her to hug her. And she said she put up this boundary that was just very simply, please don't rescue me.
Mhm.
And it was so clear because you had also talked about, and this is the case with empaths, you tend to rescue, you tend to enable, you tend to, you know, form these codependent relationships, these dramatic relationships of rescuer, victim,
Yeah.
persecutor, right? The whole drama triangle.
Yeah.
And I saw in that moment, um, and I have a very dear friend who um uh we um who was also mentored by Marianne Williamson. And Marianne told her, you're really good at the crucifixion,
Mm.
and you really need to work on your resurrection, which I thought was amazing advice. Because
I
that really
love
is just ultimately staying in the victim. And we actually had a split, this person I'm talking about. She was my mentor. I was mentoring her. And somehow we kept triggering each other's shadows just
Wow.
over and over. And she was a senior trainer in More to Life, and a very evolved, very capable. And she actually wanted to do a past life reading for us. We never did it, but because of our dramas were so perfectly matched,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My anger would come out. It
Yeah.
would remind her of her dad.
Yeah.
Her fear would come out, which would remind me of my mom. And
Yeah.
I would start to get into that. I'm going to support you. I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
And she would get into that. I'm going to support you. I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just always this perfect storm. Right.
Yeah.
And I really see it because of your story. Actually, I mean, I've seen it more clearly through this whole session, and
Yeah.
I'm actually going to write her a note after this and share this video.
Yes.
Because it's the first time the whole time when we've been in this drama, I've only seen her part of it. I've said my part of it out loud. I've
Right.
owned my part, but I've never really, really, really deeply felt my part. And I never felt that sort of pure shame of it, of
Yes.
I see it and now I want to take that step
Yes.
of integrity and owning it in a conversation with her, and really
Oh
just saying,
God.
here's my part. I'm sorry for my anger, and I'm
Hey.
sorry for that anger affected you. So
Oh, are you? I'm just blown away. I mean,
you're blown away by your power to affect this transformation on me.
I'm blown away that there's so many levels of portals of clearing for us both just through this conversation. And I'm going to be honest with you. One of the it's interesting that I'm going to show you this. One of the cards that came out when I did a reading for you, and this is just my own. Like sometimes spirit is always guiding me. Just go. Like I'm a happy healer, a happy reader, I am not one of those deep dark, that's not me. So I do tell the truth, but sometimes I shuffle so fast and I'm like, okay, that's not. So one of the first cards that came up for you, I gotta show it to you. I want you to and you're gonna get it. And the reason why I'm laughing is because it makes sense now. And I was like, I don't know if that's not for him. And I just set it down. But when you said what you said, this is one of the first cards that popped up.
Yes, yes, yes,
And I,
yes.
and I was like, no, I'm not going to start his reading with telling him to take responsibility. But I was like, that can't be, David. And I left it here. I'm telling you, you can't make this shit up. Spirit is on the money, David. I just left it here. And when you said that, Spirit hit me on the head and go, now show him the card.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
So you are awesome, dude. This is your I'm sending these cards to you. It is on the money. You cannot make this up. She's going to receive you with so much love and gladness.
Mm.
Yes. Yes.
This is so cathartic. You are truly a healer and a guide and a mentor and a coach. And there's really for me one final topic
Yeah.
to come to completeness.
Yeah.
So I would, so one thing that I see, you had talked about, I had another flash when you were talking about the spit or germs or whatever came into your mouth when you were in this church. When you said that, I was actually, and this is something that, in dialogue, there's always metacognition happening. So I'm hearing you. I'm also taking my own journey and I'm
Yeah.
reconciling the two.
Yeah.
So I had been already going, like while you were talking, I was on a strand about Moses. And at the very moment that you talked about something going into your mouth, I was actually meditating on Moses had a speech impediment. And I was thinking, and so I was also thinking about Clara and how she works with speech. And I told her about a speech impediment I had as a child. And the reason Moses had a speech impediment was he was put, oh my God, this is so deep. This is so freaking deep. This is so freaking deep. I
Yes,
am so excited.
yes,
I am so excited.
yes. Bring
Um,
it. You got me on the edge of my seat, and that's not hard to do. That's it.
Moses as a child was in Pharaoh's, he was, put in the basket and he was
Yeah.
under Pharaoh's daughter's care.
Right.
To see, to test his virtue, they put in front of him diamonds and hot coals. And he was an infant, puts everything in his mouth. He put the hot coal in his mouth
Oh,
and burned his mouth, and that's why he had a speech impediment.
wow.
And our cultural wounds, you talked about where you grew up and the shadows of your community that have happened through generational trauma. With the Jews, we have generational trauma as well.
Yeah.
It comes out in a very different way. And this is something I actually worked with my therapist on in high school. It really comes out as money shadows. With the scarcity that we faced in the shtetls when the Cossacks went through and did the pogroms, my grandfather, he had to bury an entire village in the winter, a nearby village. 45 people were killed.
Wow.
And he had a flour mill. His dad had a flour mill in Odessa. And they were always, the Cossacks would always come through. But then in the revolution, the Bolsheviks also came through and seized his father's property, saying that they were hiding because they were Jewish. They were hiding money from the revolutionaries. His dad was put in jail. He wound up taking his father's place in jail when his dad came down with tuberculosis. I won't tell the whole story, but he managed to beat up a guard, escape, cross a river at night, make his way to a point where he would actually help other Eastern European Jews escape. He wound up making his way to a boat that wound up in Providence. Anyway, long story short, growing up with him, we would save every piece of tinfoil. We would save, and like my wife, whose parents were older and grew up in the Depression, it was this money shadows and money energy, and growing up where people would tell Jewish jokes of what's a Jewish car, one that can stop on a dime and pick it up, or um, some were those, but some were the what's the difference between a Jew and a pizza? A pizza doesn't scream when you put it in the oven. you know and all of these are um being told for the first time what a kike is, and being overly, to a fault.
Yeah.
I mean, not to a fault, but instead of being generous, I became profligate.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to show all the time that it was not me that had money or cared about money, or, you know, and so my money dramas, my money shadows were kind of the opposite of the Grant Cardones with their private jets and this and that. Um, but it's become a very core part as I've gone through my creative quest.
Mhm.
It's become a very core part of my coaching is to help, and it's actually where I start. You know, the three phases are make good money, guide and be guided,
Yes.
co-create a new world, or co-create the world together.
Yes.
Um, co-create the world. And so those three steps, I want to start with you, and in terms of, because my intention in these interviews um, is to bring all these amazing creators to a broad audience. But I also, as part of the exchange, I am really looking to give something. And I would just like to talk publicly, openly with this group about, with this audience, about your financial journey, if you're willing to talk about it,
Yeah.
and what your current, because I really would like to see how we can manifest
Mhm.
really supportive programs on this platform for all of us, for everybody who participates.
Yes. Yes. And that's so, that's so powerful, DL, because I think a lot of creatives have we make our money by doing what we don't want to do, or doing what's not passionate for us. And it's interesting that you say that, because I've been committed to transforming my relationship with money since I started doing transformation work. And I grew up poor. It's no, we my mom was on welfare. My mom was raising five kids, a single mom, with bipolar and alcoholism, and I but we were middle class in a sense, because um my grandmother was like, to me, their relationship was very codependent. It now I recognize it as being sort of sick, because my grandmother was almost like my mother's man, since she was responsible for the whole thing with my dad. Her, uh, my mother suffered because of I think my grandmother felt guilty, and my grandmother always took care of us. She always. And then my dad was a veteran. He served this country, so my mom was able to buy her first house from the Veterans Administration money that my father left. But we grew up in the inner city. We grew up in the projects, and I never felt poor, because my mother was so clean, and we always had food on the table. We always had everything that we needed. But when it came to being around other kids who had all the designer stuff, and we had the basics, and there was never anything extra. Um, but my mom and my grandmother and my uncles would do everything they could to make sure us kids had a good Christmas. But there was never, like, when I became old enough to start wanting my own money as a teenager, and my friends were doing things, and I would ask my mother, and she would get up, she would literally like hit me, because I wanted money. And instead of, it was too much for her, she didn't have it. Instead of just dealing with it as a parent, I don't have it, she would get angry, and she would do something physical. And then and she couldn't work because of her mental health, but then she would get, she would go through periods where she was okay and she was able to get a job. And when she would get a job, she wanted to give us allowance, so she would start this allowance thing, and that didn't, it wouldn't be consistent. So she would start us giving us allowance, and then she would take it back, and give it and take it back. So, and my grandmother would always say money don't grow on trees. So I grew up with seeing us. There would be days we had no food, we would starve. And so my mother, our refrigerator would be so empty that we would have to eat crackers and hot sauce. She would just, like, literally, we would take a saltine cracker and pour hot sauce on a saltine cracker and eat it. And then we would have to wait for my grandfather, my mother's father. They had an awful contentious relationship because one of the things that my mother suffered from with bipolar was my grandfather raped her, sexually molested her pretty much her whole teen life. My grandmother never did anything because he beat the stew out of my grandmother, and she hated reaching out to him for anything. But when we didn't have money and no food, instead of letting her children suffer, she would call him and he would come over. And we didn't know how evil my grandfather was as kids. So to us, and it was like he was a second generation father, like he wanted to make up for how he treated his kids. He was awful to his kids. And so with us, he was this, like, oh my God, he was this money guy because he had money. So, and we only looked at him as that. So we called him daddy. And so he would come over and he would give us money. He would, let us go in his pockets, and he would bring food. And we knew that him and my mom didn't have a good relationship, but we didn't know the pain of that. So we always looked at him as, this wealthy grandfather who just came over and gave us stuff. Until, of course, as I started getting older and going into my family's closet, finding out the just wickedness and ungodliness and pain of everything. But I grew up with watching us struggle, and I never had anything. To this day, I don't like designer anything because I never had it growing up. And, I always had to share clothes with my sisters, and I had to share a room with my brother. And I never had anything of my own until I decided to move out on my own. And I was a first generation college grad. Out of all of my mother's kids, I did not get pregnant out of wedlock. My older sisters, they got pregnant as teenagers, dropped out of high school. My brother I love him to death. He dropped out of high school and started selling drugs. And so there was no money for me to go to college. And I just remember being so afraid that I would not get out of this poverty and inner city and mind shift. And I ran track my whole life. I was very successful. I actually trained for the Olympics in the 90s. I was really a fast runner. And so I was expecting to get a track scholarship. And, my coach, my high school coach, she kind of just, toward the end of my last year as a senior, she kind of just kicked me to the curb. And that's a whole nother story. And so I didn't get the track scholarship. But what happened was God stepped in and blessed me with a friend of a friend who was able to get me a partial academic scholarship. And so, like, in the final hour, I was able to get some money to at least get me into the first semester of school. And it was literally just enough to get me in that first semester. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just trust God for the rest of the money. And my mom, she felt she was devastated because there was no money for me to go to school. And when I turned 18, when in Hispanic families, when the girl turns 18, they have the sweet 16 and the quinceañera, and when she's 15. When I turned 18, my rites of passage was welfare. all of my other sisters, um, they got on welfare, and they helped. That was their way of helping with the family. So you got on welfare, you helped out mom in the house, and all of that, food stamps. And so it was expected of me to do that. And I fought against it, and I could not believe that my mother saw me as another welfare child. I had worked my ass off, and I had good grades in school. I ran track my entire life. I had all these trophies. She would come to see me compete, and she loved me so much. I know she did. And so in my mind, I was her different child. And she would always say to me, "You're my superstar." So I did not think that she would see me as she saw my other siblings, and that she would still want the same plight for me. And I worked. I got a job when I was 14 to help. And when I turned 18, they all showed up to take me to the welfare office. My grandma, it turned into the ugliest fight, because I fought my mother. I said, "I will not do this." And they all tried to make me feel guilty. Your mother needs you. She needs this money. She needs to help. And it was my oldest sister. And then my oldest sister is my father's daughter. And her and my mother were really close in age, and they hated each other because my father, this was his daughter. And and so, they had this history with each other, and we were kept from her when we were younger. She always wanted to see us, but the family would not allow it. And so when we got older, in our teens, she started coming around, and she was wealthy and she was successful, and she wanted the same thing for us. So she knew what was happening, because my mom finally allowed us, me and my brother, to be around her. She would come get us every weekend, and she would treat us like royalty, buy us anything. I mean, it was just like a whole nother world being with her. Um, and she knew that when I turned 18, that they were going to force me to get on welfare. And she came over in the middle of this awful fight between me and my mom and my grandparents. And she came and got me. And, to this day, it is something that I regret, because my mother was hurt, and they got into an altercation, and it was just ugly. It was ugly. And it was all because they literally were getting ready to take me down to welfare to sign up. And I wanted nothing to do with it, David. And I begged my mother. I said, "I will get 2 jobs to help you. I will do whatever I can, but I will not get on welfare." She just, my grandmother, I think it was more my grandmother. And, my grandmother was like Don Corleone. She was like the Godfather. Everybody did whatever she said. And so that stuck with me, that my plight in my family's eyes was welfare. And so I worked my ass off in college, and did everything I could to be somebody. To I would send I worked I had a college work study job, and I would send money home to my mom so that she could pay her bills and get the medicine that she needed. I had no money, extra money in college. I would work day and night, and I had a beautiful church family. They would feed me and, take care of me in that way. But I never got any financial support from my family in all my years in college. And I did make my grandfather, um, I would force him, because I would tell him, you owe me this. My father isn't here. I had an uncle, the uncle who killed my father, my mother's brother. um, I would guilt trip him into sending me money, because I found out by this time all the shit that was in my family. So they're like, "You murdered my father. If it wasn't for you, I would have a provider. So you need to send me some money." And he would do it. And so, you know, I went through college not having, not having designer stuff. I was always working to pay for my tuition, like what all of my other friends, they had money and families who would send them money. And my mom, one of the beautiful things about her is she supported me in other ways. Like my mother was so intellectual and so smart, and she had the gift. She was a visual artist and she could write letters. And she was the one who transformed the prison system. When my uncles, I mean, I grew up in the prison system, seeing my uncles every weekend. And so when things would happen in the prison system, where my uncles would get in trouble, or they would put them in the hole, or they weren't giving my one uncle who was a veteran his medication, she would go on a letter writing campaign that would transform everything. She would write the councilman. She was a letter writing queen. This was her gift. And so I had a situation in college where I just ran out of money, and they were getting ready to kick me out of the dorms, and I had nowhere else to go. And I was crying, and I called my mom, and my mom picked up the phone. This woman was so powerful. She talked to everybody until she got to the president of the college. And whatever conversation she had with him, by the time that day was over, I was able to stay in my dorm room for as long as I wanted to stay there. And that's that was her contribution. Is when she was well, she would always empower me. I'm going to take care of this in my way that, and she had the gift of communication through writing and through words. It was a time when I decided I wanted to get off the campus. I hated having roommates. I didn't like being in the dorm rooms because I was very independent, and I wanted to move in the senior housing, and I would have had my own apartment. And they told me no. Well, I told my mom. By the time she finished with them, they told me yes. So this was like a part of her magical gifts. But yeah, the way money was presented to me growing up, especially debt. I got into debt very early on in college. It's something that follows me to this day that I absolutely disdain. But debt was huge. And so I remember getting my first credit card and thinking I was it was a sign of wealth for me, because my mom didn't have a credit card, but she was in a lot of debt because she had credit with stores and different businesses, but not cards. And it was the worst thing I could have done. I had no money management skills, no understanding. I didn't understand that money was energy. I didn't understand that I was attached to this ancestral curse with money and credit. And it took me down under fast. And like I said, I'm still digging myself out of debt. So the one thing about me, though, because I had an education and I always saw myself as someone who's able to experience what my family didn't experience, I really worked hard to get a good job. And that was never what I wanted. Like, I always wanted to pursue acting and pursue entertainment, but the family was like, you need to get a job, you have bills to pay, and you want to help your mom. So I focused on that, and I've always had good jobs that paid very well. But because I was in a lot of debt, it didn't seem like I was making a lot of money. And even when I moved here, I left Cleveland. I've always had the best apartments. I'm a tourist. Tourists luxuriate. We love aesthetics and beauty. I always had good cars. And I'm going to tell you, I've always had these beautiful things, but probably could not have afforded them. My first car, I should have never gotten. It was a brand new car. I didn't have the money to pay for it, but I wanted it, and I got it, and I got in debt behind it. But when I left Cleveland and moved here, I was doing so well with my acting career, but I also had to get a job, and I always had great jobs. And the first one of the jobs that I had was on Wall Street, and I started working on Wall Street. I was making six figures, but because of my poverty mindset and lack, I thought I was still broke. And so I was sending money home to my family like they were a third world country in Cleveland. And it never seemed like I had enough. And when I sat down with my and did my taxes, when they showed me how much I made, I said, "You're lying. I don't see that money. There's no way I make that kind of money." And it struck me, oh my God, like, have I been living my life on this defaulted energy with the relationship that I had with money? Like hundreds of thousands of dollars going through my bank account. And in my mind, I was still broke because I was still taking care of my family. And I felt, and because I felt I was still broke, I never had money. Like at the end, I was always spending it, you know. And it was just this cycle of negative energy with my relationship with money. And one of the things that I noticed that I'm still transforming my relationship with money is that I always had good things. I've always made good money as an employee. My challenge has always been not earning the money doing what I love, and always having to run back to survival jobs and then make enough money, stop that, and then come back and do what I love. And that's been what's been happening with me and money.
Wow. Well, are you ready?
I am.
All right.
Hey, David.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. There are three parts of the creator.
Mm-hmm.
One is being honored, one is being respected, and one is being valued. And the key is reciprocity, where you respect, honor, and value others, and you respect, honor, and value yourself, and then others wind up respecting, honoring, and valuing you. So what we're going to work on together, and this is going to take more than a moment. We're going to have to get back together for this, but I'm just letting you know what we're going to be doing together is we're going to be creating value pathways.
Value pathways. Got it.
Yes, we're going to be creating value pathways. I take it your
I had to
laptop is out of energy. Yes. Well, I spot on that money is energy, and energy is energy, and energy is money, and energy is time, and time is money, and time is energy, and time is space, and the whole thing is flow. So we're going to create value pathways where they're going to be, I'll just tell you some of the examples of my own value pathways that I'm creating. It's working. So I have clients that pay me $15,000 up front. I have clients that pay me $3,400 for an 8-week program. Okay. I have clients that pay me $97 a month. Mm-hmm. I have, and there's what I get to do is be a creator. And what I'm seeing happening in the creator economy is it's really moving into all of these poverty dramas, like tipping, like Patreon. I've just entertained you. I've just tap danced. I've just done whatever, and now you're going to tip me. That doesn't really value you. Or Substack, read my newsletter for free, but you can, tip me. Yeah. Clubhouse just added tipping, and Facebook's getting into it, and
Yeah.
it's that's not really valuing
Yeah.
other people. It's not really valuing source.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you unlock so much for me today. I mean, and I can testify to your value, and it's really invaluable. I mean, there's not like an amount of money I could have paid you. I mean, let's say this was a 2-hour session
Yeah.
and you were charging me $350 an hour. Paying you $700 is actually not honoring your gifts.
Hmm.
Um, because what you delivered was invaluable. And this goes back to I've spent a lot of time with my co-creator, my uncle, Four Arrows, um,
Yeah. What's his?
talking Four Arrows.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to send you an interview I did with him. He's actually the person who really supported me through. I'm actually uh, in 2016. Um, I took $4 million from for a previous company. 3 million of it was a secured loan, but it's what on Wall Street they call a loan to own. So they loaned $3 million in secured debt. My company was growing really fast, and they were supposed to lend 12. They were supposed to invest a total of $12 million. It was a merchant bank. The
Okay.
first $4 million came in, and immediately they started, trying to get rid of me and taking over the company. And it
Oh,
became this whole battle. This was part of when I talked about more to life, the transderivation and the compulsive repetition.
wow.
This was a big moment where I understood my relationship with this investor and
Uh,
how that had gone to my relationship with this person and this person all the way back to that deeper wound. Um, and there was a wound in there with my parents, and all of these different wounds that had come from this. But those money wounds that you talked about are they're not different from the other wounds,
mm,
right? So that drama for me of having to show, just like Moses,
mm,
that these diamonds weren't beautiful,
mhm,
right? That it wasn't okay to have something beautiful for myself, that
mhm,
someone was going to judge me for having something beautiful, for being worthy, for being worth something. How much is my genius worth? How much is my heart worth? How much is my empathy? How much is my compassion worth? Well, that's the root of all of this. The traditions that I've, you know, finally adopted, the indigenous traditions, show in the Lakota tradition is very much like the Kabbalistic tradition, which is the whole world creator split itself up into a million shards. It's a little different. In Kabbalah, God is everything,
everything, yeah.
but and there is the tree that you talked about, the tree of life,
I
um,
studied Kabbalah for
the Axis Mundi. Oh, great, awesome.
it's
So
tempting.
yeah, so we're all separate, right? But we're all part of the whole.
Yes.
So it's a broken vessel. Um, in in the Lakota tradition, the original form pierced itself and bled, and we're all part of that blood,
Mm,
right? So we are infinitely valuable in the scheme of the universe because we are co-creating the universe. We are co-creators. It's And Spinoza showed this. I mean, we are fundamentally necessary for the whole thing. What is ethics? In the ethics, what it actually winds up coming down to when you get to the bottom of it is health. And that um, two people or three people or a person, and out my window I have the whole standing nation is there, right? That symbiotic relationship between me and my fellow creatures, these beautiful trees, is so clear, right? There's no hierarchy
Yes.
of that value. So in establishing these value pathways, the money, the energy is able to flow to the extent that people want it to flow. And what happened was, so Four Arrows is an indigenous healer. So he does sweat lodges, he does other types of ceremonies. And in that tradition, you're never paid for healing. So he doesn't even charge for his hypnotherapy, because you're not supposed to. When I really looked into this, it became clear that in the old way, people would take care of the medicine man, the shaman, the Ieska, the Wakasa Wakan, the Ikche Wichacha. They would take care of them by, after a ceremony, you would give them a chicken. Well, that was pretty much infinite wealth at that time, right? I mean, that chicken was invaluable, So it's this same distortion that happens, and spending all this time on the reservation, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, which is the most impoverished county in the United States, that belief, that limiting belief of the separation of my gifts as a healer from sustenance. So I have to get a job. What we want to bring back in the creator economy, and it took a lot of dialogue with Four Arrows for both of us to get comfortable with, what does it mean to heal? And what does it mean when someone has an urgent need? Right? And what does it mean to coach and mentor and guide? And what honoring indigenous traditions as they are today and functioning within the solar, so that's the lunar, functioning within the solar hierarchical world, being able to walk on the liminal threshold between nature and culture and move those energies work those energies so you don't get these dams of money where everything is stuck in a vault. Wow, I just lost you. Hopefully you'll come back. I'm talking into don't you love synchronicity? Well, I'm actually going to pause this because you don't want to just be looking at me. I can't, you're muted.
I don't know what happened. I think our powers are just so illuminated right now.
We blew a fuse.
You just set my internet on fire, David. Seriously. Oh my God. I was like, oh my God, I'm good. So I don't know I'm sure that was my computer, but I'm on my phone now until my laptop comes back on.
Okay. Well, we're very close to completion.
It's hard too, right? I don't want to let you go, but yes, I know all good things must come to an end.
So, and I actually, while you were off, I received a text message from Clara
about,
yes, Thursday, May 20th, 10 a.m. daily kickstart. And you're in this clubhouse session.
Yes, I'm going to be leading, doing Akashic record readings. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so I would love to join that. If you could share.
Yeah, I'll nominate you to be in the room. I would love you to be there. Yes.
Awesome. This will be totally fun.
Okay. Are you, is your name David Larson Levine on Clubhouse so I can follow you, or is it just David Levine?
Um, I think it's David Larson Levine. I can't remember. I think I'm Moto Dave in terms of my little handle. So if you
Okay.
do like, yeah, Moto Dave. Um, yeah, but this will be great. I'm actually going to just share my screen for a moment so that the people who are watching this can see. I'm going to share this video far and wide and let people know that you can uh, follow Sheilah on Clubhouse and
Yes.
and it's actually on Clubhouse I met is where I met Clara. So
Yeah,
it's how
she
we
told
originally
me.
connected. Yeah. So let me finish with the value pathways. So
Yes.
um there's one thing in marketing that you'll see all the time is manufactured urgency. You know, limited time offers, act now, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And manufactured scarcity, which flies in the face of abundance. And so almost everything I see online, 4 Arrows and I used to joke about the Sitting Bull of Madison Avenue. What if you had a truth teller of the universe as your copywriter? And so,
Ooh.
yeah. So that's one of the hats I wear is the Sitting Bull of Madison Avenue. So what we're going to do together in as part of our co-creation is bring forward because I didn't know coming into this what the urgency was. I knew that there was something missing in my life, that there was something that I was not owning my part of, that I wasn't taking responsibility
Mm,
for,
mm,
but I didn't know what that was, right?
mm.
So that was the real crux that I gained. And what's going to come from that? Again, unlimited, unbounded value. So it is what we're going to be delivering in terms of the medicine is there are times, just like what was delivered to you with the Twin Flames video. That was just on YouTube. That was free. That's part of the value pathway. Like you're doing with Clubhouse. That's part of the value pathway. So there's free, and there's going to be $100,000 enterprise programs, you know, corporate programs. And so if Citigroup, you know, engaged you for a number of people that
Mm-hmm.
might have to do with their integrity and predatory lending
Yeah.
and, you know, owning their shadows at a deep level individually and understanding how the corporate shadow is just a manifestation
Mm-hmm.
of the shadows of everybody involved.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that the transforming that shadow, that lead, that prima materia into gold is a liberation vision for the corporate vessel. And
Mm.
so every corporation can be an alchemical vessel for transformation. And that's part of that's what I got into this for. I mean, I really saw that once when we did the healing, the community building in San Quentin, I came to the realization, the revelation, that a prison is a building with people. Just like a
Mm.
hospital, like a school, like an office, like a church, no different, right? It
Wow.
is it is a structure containing people.
Yes.
So the work that you do in business at work is the same work that you do in prison. It's the
Yeah.
same work. It's the same work that we're doing. It's co-creating the universe through shared stories.
Ah, David, where have you been all my life? I bet your wife said that too.
My long-suffering wife, you nailed it with with your revelation of our relationship. We are unquestionably um each other's people. There's
Yeah.
100% no question. There is not another person in the universe um, who would have co-created this journey with me that we've had in our marriage and our family. It's just, yeah, no question
Wow.
there.
How old are your kids again?
The youngest is, I'm gonna get it wrong. No, 20. 20. The oldest is 26, and the middle is 24. And I'm
Wow.
also a grandfather. I have a 2-year-old grandson.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yes, and they are my heart. And just like I was, it's really interesting with mind, body, and spirit. Um,
Yes.
uh, that is really my children too. Um, and I've always thought of it as mind, body, and heart, which is really the same thing. Heart and spirit are really the
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But my youngest is just, she's studying mechanical engineering and quantum physics. Um,
Wow.
just way out there, brain brilliant. My oldest is a true healer, but she manifests so much through her body. She's a music therapist, and she's just very, everything about her is just bodacious, and you know, um, she's a Zumba instructor, and
Oh my
she's just
God.
she's
I
just
love her
very,
already.
yeah, she's very body, and Milo is just all heart, all spirit,
Oh,
just, and they all like the Venn diagram. They have a lot of the others, but it's just really been such a gift for my life.
so you have
So if,
three girls?
oh no, 2 girls and a boy. The middle child's a
Okay.
boy.
Okay.
And he's the father. And so now we also have another daughter, Gabby, who we love dearly,
Oh,
who's um, really is a beautiful companion for Milo. So
yes.
where
So it sounds like they got all parts of each one of them are expressed in every part of who you are, the light and the shadow.
no question. And my wife and I talk about this a lot. I mean, they really are like this. They're kind of this spectrum of the two of us, you know. um, where Milo is more on the Monica side of the spec. She's also an empath and just takes in um energy, you know. But both of them,
Okay.
yeah, you're back.
Yes.
Both of them, neither of them have chosen to consciously develop all the tools of protection. A lot of using these empathic gifts is also really establishing boundaries. um Milo is also studying to be a music therapist. He's starting his, I love bragging about my kids. He's starting a program with um serving in hospices in the Philadelphia area
My God,
as
are
a
you
music
serious?
therapist. Yeah, so that the end of life journey
Oh,
is, he's such a magical child. But it's painful for me to see how much Milo, my son, and Monica do take on other people's, you know, struggles, challenges, dramas,
so
and
why is that painful for you? Like what, you know what I'm saying? Like why is that painful for you?
because they're my family, and there is something that's real about family members really not having the power to coach or heal or mentor or guide other family members. It's just, so I'll see something where, if it was my client or my partner, I could make an intervention, but I've really learned not to do that. I only hold my counsel and hold them, and I'm for them, and just just listen. And it's my wish for them that they find you or Clara or all of these. That's part of why I'm gathering together all of these amazing healers, mentors, creators, guides from the universe, so that sometimes people are going to find
Yeah.
different pathmates, you know.
And it sounds like they have found, they have answered the call of their soul, and they're expressing that in the way that's still connected to who you are and what you've given them. And um and the more gifts of yourself is just allowing, just like allowing them to continue to show up and shine in the way that lights them up. And like Milo is drawn to heal people through his gifts of music. um it's
And
funny.
my wife, when I just have to say one thing about
Yeah, yeah.
Monica, because she's known as the calm mom. She's a university professor,
And she
and
really,
she takes care of her students. I mean, she guides them on these such profound transformational individuation journeys. And
wow.
also, like you said in the beginning, she doesn't even see it. Like, they'll tell her all the time, like, they'll come back after 20 years and talk about what gift she's given them. It's the really interesting thing. They don't, it's that self-identification as a protector and a provider, in this way. That's just, it's just, I see it, and just my heart just feels for them. That's what I'm saying, because they're giving their gifts, and it's just is that empathy that it is, there is so much pain. And there's also a lot of joy, clearly, in
Yeah,
this path.
yeah.
um and it is just, yeah, it's just a very simple wish that, yeah, it's just, my heart just feels for them, just like it does many empaths. But when I have two real empaths in my family, it just, it feels, I can just feel it right now. It's
It's heavy.
just,
Yeah, you're turning red. I can see
yeah.
you're feeling it. So if I could just hold your heart right now, like in my hand, and with this big smiley energy that I have, I would say to your beautiful heart, I would say, DL, you are so strong. You are so courageous, and you've given life to amazing, courageous, creative healers. And they are the birds of your existence. And just, you can release the pain of what you think they are experiencing and let them fly, and
Mm,
turn the heaviness and the pain into the possibility of joy and pride, because they are being portals for other people to experience release.
mm,
They
I feel
are
that.
allowing their gifts to be used by the infinite, and they're creating life forces in the cosmos. And you've been instrumental in that happening. So they are created, they have all the tools in addition to what you've given them. They were created for this, it's their soul contract. And they are thriving in that which they are contracted to do, even in the heaviness. But know that they are making a difference for the receptors of their gifts. And that, may it fill your heart with joy.
So first, I'd actually like to acknowledge myself for two gifts that I received in that. One was the foundational release of myself from some sort of obligation or, you know, or really limiting belief that there was anything more that I had to offer than just my love and my forness for them. And that's really all I need in that relationship with them, and all they need is my love. That they don't need the other stuff that I do and bring to other people. So that was a huge gift that I receive gratefully.
I love that.
The other is it really brought full circle my money drama, because there is that patriarchal provider aspect that that wound when I wasn't, when we went through the bankruptcy, this sort of chain reaction bankruptcy from this litigation with these vulture capitalists. And working through in my work now with SCOBY, I very purposefully put money as the first step rather than the final step. Because all of these other things are about how to make money. And if money is somehow a purpose in this, then it doesn't work, right? Getting your money right has to be the first step, right? And getting your money right isn't a particular amount. It's getting it to go from how much and what do I need and all of the demands and the dramas around demand to to faith. That's the main thing I learned on the Hill from my two most, and this is a story I'm not going to tell now. I'm not going to tell this story now.
I want you to parking lot it for our next conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But it just, I do have a medicine shield right above. You can't see it because it's right behind me.
Okay.
A medicine shield I put together with Black Horse, my first Lakota guide. And it has a deer jaw, which is sustenance. It has turkey feathers, which are sustenance. It has a fox pelt, which is the trickster, the many, the ability to shapeshift, to take whatever strategy at whatever time is called for survival. And it has 2, 4, 6. It has 8 crow feathers. And the crow or the raven is that liminal threshold, the transition between worlds. And it has at the center an eagle feather. Eagle is, and my Lakota name is Eagle Heart, Chante Wambly.
Yes.
My family, Standing Cloud gave me that name.
Oh
gosh. And Eagle Heart is the far seeing. So the eagle sees more than anybody else, has the sharpest vision. Only needs to hunt for moments a day. I mean, just basically flies there's what I need. There's my fish. There's my rabbit. There's my, what I want, gets it. There's no survival drama whatsoever.
Yes. Yes.
Zero.
I
And
love it.
so what I recognized by bringing this around back into money and having the conversation about money, it was bringing my own drama into the conversation because I wanted to do two things. I mean, I've established myself as the founder and CEO of Scoby, and it's my job to show up and coach these coaches. Some are executive coaches, some are comedian psychics, some are, and that's what I'm doing. And I somehow have these things to share. And what I really hadn't allowed myself to do until this moment, until you really led me through that journey, was just to accept your gifts and just to accept what you have to offer and not be caught up in a reciprocity drama. Like just, and I just really appreciate your releasing that for me as well. And just like what was going through my mind in terms of, and what's been going through my mind through this whole, that trickster mind for this whole summit was like, I'm on LinkedIn and some people are, saying, well, I'm an executive coach. I don't need what you're doing. There are no companies out there that are going to, use an app to find, executive coaches. And I'm like, you have no idea
I
what's
know.
actually happening. Like if you're limiting yourself with these beliefs that there
Yeah.
aren't, the CEO of Google isn't doing ayahuasca,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
CEO of Wells Fargo isn't a Burning Man,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
those guys are freakier than we are. You could be at a hot tub at Esalen Institute and do more
Yeah.
business than
Yes.
you're doing with your limited, so I am just now in this mode of, oh my God, I want to go into Citigroup with Sheilah Smiley.
Yeah.
That's my new, like, that's my
Yeah.
new, like, yeah,
I love
that's
it.
like, that's back to mythology. That is the scale that's missing in
Yeah.
the dragon that's
Yeah.
on that hoard of gold. And the arrow being the song of child born of water entering the heart and
Mm.
finally transforming that hoarding dragon and transforming the world with our story.
Yes. Oh, that is medicine to my soul, David. I love it. I love all of your awakenings today. And thank you for awakening me even more. This is so powerful. And I look forward to our divine collaboration and the mind, body, spirit, me, you, and Clara. I'm all over it.
All right. I love you so much,
I
and I
love
so
you.
appreciate your gifts.
Yes, yes. I'm going to send you these cards. Are you on WhatsApp by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Why don't we, I'll just send you all my coordinates by email,
okay, that's perfect.
including WhatsApp.
Yeah, that's how I send the cards. It's because WhatsApp can
Awesome.
hold more files. So yeah.
Wonderful.
I love you, David.
Love you too.
Eagle heart.
Thank you so much for you. I am so grateful.
Yes.
Thank you, universe, for Sheilah.
Yes. Yes. I will see you Thursday in
Yes.
the space, and I'm going to nominate you to join the club now.
Thank you
Mwah,
so much.
mwah,
Mwah.
mwah, mwah.
Bye.
Bye.